All right, what's going on, everybody? We are live on all of our platforms. As always, if you can't hear me or something's going on, let me know. We're going to wait about a minute to let everybody get in. And as we wait for everyone to kind of join, I'm going to tell a little story. Connor, you have to wait for my story because it's about last night. So, last night we had practice and it's fall break. So, we had the boys play some 3x. And I love playing 3x. It's something that I never feel like is a waste of time because it really helps the players get better. And I'm thinking to myself before practice, I had my iPad in my backpack. And my iPad's right there on Facebook. That's what's recording the Facebook live stream right now. And I thought to myself, oh man, I really want to make sure that I don't have someone step on my backpack to break my backpack or to break my iPad. And so I take it out of my backpack and I put it in my car. Then I get home and I had to use my ball bag or my backpack as a ball bag because I haven't received my ball bag back because I can't coach on Sundays, so we had to use the ball bag on Sundays. So as I'm putting all of the stuff back into my car and putting the balls back into a bucket that I grabbed and, I'm using now for the balls, I dropped my iPad that I was concerned with breaking on the field in my garage and broke my iPad. And so that's my story before we get into our actual topic. But this one on Facebook, you guys are basically just going to see the cracks. But so I totally busted up my iPad. So that's my bummer story. So, that kind of just is what it is. So now what we're going to do now that everybody's kind of on is we're going to talk about an issue that a viewer brought up last week, which is reclassification. If you don't know so here's the idea. Reclassification is the idea of if you hold a kid back, whether he's a first grader or he's in high school, it doesn't matter. Their age is going to give them an athletic benefit once they, get older. So I've got a few stories that I'll tell for this, but let's clarify the thumbnail first. So in the thumbnail, you have two teams. The first team, the defensive team, is the Tommy Knockers, I believe 2026, and they are playing against the six-star team that's a 2025 team. And sometimes in tournaments, you have to play up or down a year against some people because there aren't enough teams to fill that division, and that's fine. That allows the players to play. Now, neither one of those teams reclass anybody. So just to clarify that, those teams are two of the best teams in Colorado for their age groups. Well, they're two of the best teams in Colorado overall because they're also nationally recognized teams. But so here's the idea. When I was coaching for 3D, we would always have to play the younger or older 3D team. And this is back when all of the 3D teams were essentially the best of the best players in Colorado. And whenever we would have to play up, we would be very, very competitive against teams that were the middle of the road for the team for the year above us. Now, if we ever played an elite team for the year above us, we'd get annihilated and smashed. So the whole idea of this live stream is to evaluate all of the positions for reclassification, because if you have an entire team of kids that are an entire year older, clearly they're going to have a benefit. And if they have enough of a benefit, it's going to create a bad situation for tournaments, for teams, for everybody, because kids aren't going to enjoy playing. And so that's basically what we're going to talk through. So now that you know what reclassification is, we're going to read a couple of things. This won't be too long, but so John Nicholas writes, I would like to hear your thoughts on reclassification and why US Lax caved on implementing their age-based system. So essentially US Lacrosse wanted to make sure that all tournaments were age-based, and because of that, the reason they wanted to do that was just to make sure that the tournaments were fun and that everyone was enjoying their tournaments. And I don't know why they caved. I don't have any idea with what happened. I have my thoughts, and we'll kind of get into that. But so I answered him back, and then I got another reply. And this reply is a little bit more, to the point if you're going to kind of be, a lot more griping. So here is the reply. I've always believed that U.S. Lacrosse and state athletic associations for schools miss the boat. Age-based criteria does not address the most important factors in safety and fairness, size, and physical development. Age is irrelevant when you have an 80-pound freshman getting beat down by a 120-pound junior. I think they might have meant like 210-pound junior, not sure, who didn't make varsity or is playing down because a coach is only concerned about winning and covering up his or her lax IQ. Shots fired. And basically coaching skill deficit with pure brute force. Throw in a new crop of referees who don't understand the dynamics of size and impact injury or the rules of the game, and you have all kinds of mismatches and physical confrontations resulting in injury. We've lost control of our game to football parents, football coaches, and daddy ball coaches who only understand running the ball and hitting anyone who gets in your way. I blame U.S. Lacrosse, Warrior, Under Armour, and ESPNU. They push the game into the mainstream by pushing out the culture of modesty and technical skill and replacing it with revenues, expensive name brand recognition, gimmick sticks, and the typical meathead jock mentality of winning is everything and relentless, ruthless physicality wins games. Marketing you see damn near, or basically the marketing that you see damn near every NFL sportscast commercial. Lacrosse has become football with sticks. Now, that's a lot. So I'm going to try and piece out all of the arguments and make sure that we have a clear understanding of exactly kind of what their arguments are so that we can piece them out, because I think that they have a lot of very good arguments. It's just about making sure that we build and understand them from a good base level from each aspect. So the original part, and that's what we're going to talk about first, is reclassification based on, what are the people involved. So as I was researching this, I found a couple of articles. One of the articles that I found was a Deadspin article about about high school lacrosse players being held back so that they would be older against competition. Now, if you are reclassing because say you want to go to Yale, okay, and not to say that Yale does this, I'm sure they do. I know that Maryland does, so I don't know why Yale wouldn't. But say you wanted to go to Yale, and you are not that competitive with your age group, and the Yale coach says to you, hey, if you go to a prep school for a year, we will be able to give you money or a scholarship to go to Yale. And if not, you're going to go to state school of choice. That's a good friggin' decision to go to that prep school. That's not a bad decision to go to that prep school, especially because you're thinking of Yale and, all of the things that Yale means. Yale means a lot. Yale can, I've never been a part of a club like this, but apparently Yale is like a club where people all hire each other and yada, yada, yada. But so if going to a prep school for a year to make you older when you get in is going to allow for you to go to Yale, I fully support your decision. I don't think that that's a bad thing. And for anyone who thinks that age or college is required for, should be an age-based thing, you're ridiculous. And so I looked up another cool thing. Who is the oldest college football player? And the oldest college football player happens to play at CU, where I went to school. And so at CU Boulder, currently, the oldest player in the nation is James Stefanu. I think that's how you probably say his name. He's a place kicker, and he's 32. So he's my age, which is crazy considering I graduated from college about 10 years ago. So there's also a bunch of other players who've been old. The oldest college football player to ever actually play was Alan Moore, who was 61 years old. He played for Faulkner University in Montgomery, Alabama. He played in 2011. He was also a kicker. So that basically expels your age range thing for if you want to get into college. So if your goal is to get into a specific college and you feel that holding yourself back a year or doing something like that to get into college, I fully respect your decision. We are eliminating that fact from the rest of this discussion because it doesn't matter for lacrosse. It's something you can't deal with. It's something that you can't hate on, because we live in America and you're free to do whatever you want as long as you don't infringe on the rights of others. And so if they, want to go to college when they're 32 or 61 or however old, that's on them. They can do whatever they need to. Now, our next thing that we are going to cover is, let me see if I can find this. So with that, now the question becomes, how did U.S. Lacrosse get into this? And now we're kind of getting into the second issue with kind of some of the stuff that he was talking about. So the first thing, age is a huge dichotomy. Kids who are older develop faster, yada, yada. If you've ever been into a high school weight room, the first thing that the coach says, if he's a good weight coach, is it's where you start, or it's not where you start, it's where you finish. Because some kids will hit puberty at 12 or 13, and they'll be 6'2" when they're 13, and the other kid won't be 6 foot until he's 17. And so depending on, the key is that you go in and you put the work in when you're in the weight room. But you see this huge difference when you hit like the U15 age bracket based on size, based on whether you hit puberty. And so there's a level of that comes into the differences in a single year based on the size and difference of kids. And then when you get into high school where you have multiple years, you have an even bigger dichotomy if you have more kids who are juniors on one team and more who are not on the other. So the question now comes, why did U.S. Lacrosse, basically why are all these tournaments able to go by graduation year, where people are able to hold their kids back in kindergarten, which we'll see in this article, or take a post-grad year and still play in these tournaments when they are a year older than everybody else, but they're graduating in the same year. And that's where all of the trouble kind of happens. And I'll just say it as plainly as I can. It's a business. It's totally a business. So adrenaline, 3D, FLG, I'm not sure about the National Lacrosse Foundation ones, but some of these tournaments are like $5,000 to enter. And the reason they're $5,000 to enter is because the teams that go there, or because the people who are putting on the tournament, they pay coaches to come in and to evaluate the kids that are there. It's a way of getting college coaches to see a good amount of people and a good amount. It's basically a draw. Come to my tournament. There's going to be a bunch of college coaches there, but it costs a good amount of money. And so if you fly people in, you can definitely, you're going to have exorbitant amount of costs, and therefore you're going to have to charge a lot of money. And so the question is, why is it not age-based versus graduation year-based? And the reason is because of that thing. A college coach isn't going to want to come and have to look through a stat book based on when that kid might come to them. They want to be able to look at a sheet of paper that says 2020 or 2021 or 2022 and know, okay, I could get this kid in 3 years. Oh, wait, but my third year here is already full. So maybe if I have him post-grad, I might want him for my 2024 year. That's kind of how you kind of got to think about it. But if the tournaments make it difficult for a college coach to come, they're not going to come even if they pay them. And so from that business perspective, you're going to eliminate a lot of club tournaments that are going to be based on fun and based on and everything but recruiting strictly for that manner. Now, the crazy thing about this, I think one of the most crazy things about this is that the college coaches are going to find you if you have that amount of, if you're good enough, right? That's always what's been said. The college coach is going to find you. Now, if you don't try, they're never going to find you. But if you're good enough, they're going to find you. And at least some of them will, and then hopefully the word will spread. But if you can go to one of these tournaments, it'll help greatly. So that's the first thing about why I don't think, and the other thing about U.S. Lacrosse and the whole LADM and this whole thing is that you can't just make people change, right? Like, I'm choosing to change. I'm choosing to read the research so I know how to convey ideas to a 9-year-old versus a 13-year-old. That's what we talked about in the last one. But U.S. Lacrosse can't just come to be like, no, you have to do it this way, especially when you're talking about these tournaments that you know, draw in a massive amount of money and have built an infrastructure that allows them to do all of these things. Now, whether the way they're doing it is good or bad is based on your own opinion. I'm not going to get, I like the soulful part of the sport, but I definitely see the advantage of, how they are building the tournaments now. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Now we're going to get on to some of the more of the kind of reclass things. So I found this Deadspin article from, let's see, when was this made? This is from May 1st of 2014. Now, I'm going to read some portions of this. So this is about high school lacrosse. Playing on his 19th birthday, the senior attackman scored 3 goals, including the game-tying score late in the fourth quarter to lead the Little Hoyas, which is Georgetown Prep, to a 9-7 win over the Bears, which was Landon, on Friday in North Bethesda. And so as they talk about this basically, okay, here we go. We'll just read the rest of it. 19 used to be more of an age for college kids, but anecdotal evidence abounds that private school students are being held back a grade or redshirted a whole lot more than they used to be. It's so commonplace now that parents of prep athletes have come up with a new word, free of any unseeming connotations, to describe the practice. Blue bloods, it turns out, don't redshirt. They're kids, they reclassify them. So that's the reclassification idea. And so this basically talks through a couple of places that reclassification becomes commonplace. And so if you want to reclass, you're totally right. It's definitely happening in a ton of different sports. It's not just lacrosse. But so I know of a bunch of parents who've actually held their kids back in, they don't put them into kindergarten so that they'll be in a year older. And one of the things that this article gets into is that sometimes that's very bad for the kid, because the kid is looked at as basically a dumb kid of that age because he's older. His peers or their peers basically think that they were stupid, therefore they, were held back a year. Not that they were held back so that they would be, so that they would be a better athlete. So one more thing that we're going to read from the Deadspin article. I think there's a couple more actually. So in hockey and most kids sports, teams and leagues are organized by year of birth. Gladwell's book, 10,000 hours, purported to show that the disproportionate number of successful hockey players were born in the first few months of the year, meaning that age matters. But many top lacrosse camps, including POWLAX, group so-called select teams, projected high school graduation year. So that's why they can reclass. The scheme encourages redshirting. Held back players are guaranteed to be older than their non-redshirted campmates, and thus, the thinking goes, they enjoy better odds of making the select squads, which means better coaching, which means better exposure to college recruiters, which means a better shot at winning an athletic scholarship. Now, one of the most important things that everyone has to understand, and I say it in every high school meeting that I have, is there's 9 times as much money for academic scholarships than there is for athletic scholarships. So if you really want to get a scholarship to go to school, your grades have to be there. And that's something that these guys get into too. It's for a lot of these players, they're 4.0 students. They're great. They've got great academics too. It's not like they're just, reclassing because they want to be, that's all they're about. It's just the fact that, sometimes that gives you that little bit of extra oomph. So one thing that I really liked about this article that was pretty funny. So they basically talk about this school that's a middle school, and the middle school holds kids back because they're not allowed to hold them back in high school because they only have 4 years of eligibility. So if they're using their first year, then the next 4 years is where it is. So, I'm not going to go over where this is or who it is. I don't think that really matters. If you want to look up the Deadspin article, you can. But basically, this guy, he uses a non-argument that doesn't give you his point. So They're talking about a team that beat them by a lot of points. So just let me find this. I know I highlighted it. I just got to get down to it. Okay, so basically, there we go. Here's what the person from the school that's holding kids back so that they're older says. We're certainly not holding kids back for athletics, he says. People do it for the kids. It's an academic decision. In first grade, Nostradamus couldn't figure out if they're going to be a lacrosse player. We don't time them in the 40 or do a bench press test. Completely doesn't cover the issue whatsoever. It doesn't at all. I don't care if you don't test them in the 40 till they're in third grade or second grade or wherever they are. The bottom line is if you hold them back in kindergarten, they're going to have an athletic advantage later. There's no ifs, buts, or buts about it. That's just what it's going to be. So people can tell you all they want about, reclassing isn't doing this and that, and it's making a difference. So I've got a bunch of people who are from Colorado. So one of them, a player that played for me at Grandview, Ty Hussey, he's going to be going to Denver. And every time they came back, man, those kids are so good. They're so much bigger than us. They're huge. He's talking about Team 91, I want to say Smash. I'm not sure which one it is, but either way. But a bunch of those kids have reclassed, and Ty would always come back and talk about how much bigger those kids were. And so it's like, you see that. And then even this year I had a parent come back and say, the reclassing is, ruining the game because we're playing against all these kids that are so much bigger than us. And I can definitely see their point. The question is there anything that can be done about it? And should there be something done? So here's an idea for the first thing that could be done about it. You could create a division in the tournaments that allows for graduated seniors. Or if you do it age-based, you just create an age-based bracket for that group. Now, the problem is a bunch of people who reclass aren't going to be in the same area and aren't going to be able to form a team. Now, if you want to do an all-star game for that group, you could do that, but I don't really see any way to fix it. I think that it's kind of just a state of the game, and you can be a person who wants to reclass so that you can get into a college for whatever reason, or you can not be. It's kind of up to you. I personally don't think it's that big of a deal for me, but I can see, I don't know what I will or won't do yet, but I don't think now that I would hold my son back in kindergarten so that he'd be older for sports. First off, he's really big now anyway. So hopefully that'll continue. So we're going to kind of get into some of the other things that was raised by the second person now. So basically, my opinion on reclassing, and this could change. It's not fully, it doesn't have to stay what it is. But my opinion for the reclassing is that I think it can be a good thing for someone who's dead set on getting into a specific school. Like, take the best lacrosse player that I've ever seen at the high school ranks, Bubba Fairman. He was such an overpowering force when we played him, when we traveled to Utah to play him at Brighton. And he was the best player in the nation for my opinion. Now, we tried to quadruple team him on a clear with a LSM and 3 very good riding attackmen, and he ran all over us. And that kid still took a post-grad year at Deerfield before going to Maryland. And so it's like, it's crazy. One kid who is totally destroying everybody right now, who I'm pretty sure didn't PG or didn't reclass, is Asher Nolting at High Point. I don't believe he did. I don't actually know, but I'm pretty sure that he didn't, because when he was a freshman at Cherry Creek, he came in and he was helping us do a box clinic at the old players bench, and I'm pretty sure that he didn't reclass, but he's destroying it. I mean, he's the best player to ever come out of Colorado, in my opinion, but I don't think he did. So, the other thing, so I definitely can see the idea of age-based, but you've got to separate the idea of business style, am I getting something out of it, or love of the game, enjoying the sport, because those are two very, very different things, and I definitely think that there's a place for both of them. Like, you can't stop someone from trying to get into a good school by reclassing. Okay. So now, those are my basic thoughts on reclassing. Now we're kind of getting into some of the second issue stuff that was raised by the second person who wrote this comment. So just to do a quick recap, here are some of the basic problems that this person sees. Age is irrelevant due to puberty. In high school, you're going to have juniors, you're going to have freshmen. They're going to be different ages. They're going to be different sizes. If your kid didn't hit puberty yet, I'm sorry, they're going to be athletically, not as good as, or not as athletically able as some of the other kids. That's just kind of the way it is. Inexperienced coaches relying on brute force instead of lax IQ. That is a state of the game problem. There's nothing you can do about it until everyone starts to pick up their level of coaching. So that's literally exactly what I'm doing with the master coach stuff that I'm doing is I put out all the content for free. Anybody can watch it. Hopefully it'll help them to understand enough about the game so that they can put in the finesse aspects of the game and not just be brute force people. So when I was in high school, we had a player named Billy Sonamaker. He was a football lineman, huge kid. And then Jovan Mays, him as well, another huge kid. And they were defensemen. They were big, they were fast, and they could hit. And if you got in tight and you were in the middle, they were going to put you on your butt every single time. And so that's just kind of what the game was. Now, as both of those players grew, they got a little bit more of that finesse aspect, but it's a good thing to have the football players coming to lacrosse and enjoying the sport and understanding the physical nature. Now, you have to understand that if the rules aren't being applied, and that's another thing that this person says, is you add in the football kids coming who think it's all about hitting, then you add a ref who doesn't understand the idea of setting the tone of the game to make sure that the players are safe, then you get into a bunch of issues where you're going to have kids that are going to be getting hit. And I definitely understand that argument. So to get into another point that they made, the idea of using brute force, whether it's a player or a coach, the bottom line is that athleticism wins. That's all there is to it. If you have a team that's more athletic than the other team, okay, so this weekend we played in the Havoc tournament. And I am currently coaching a Colorado Scorpions team, and they are some of the best players I've seen at their age group, period. And we played a Denver Elite Silver team, and some of the Denver Elite Silver kids were with us last weekend for the 7v7 tournament. Now, we got destroyed by Denver Elite Silver in the championship. It was like 12-2. Those kids are more athletically superior than the players on the Scorpions team. They move better. A lot of them have better sticks. They have a system that really works that they've all done. We're kind of doing more of a freelance thing, but the bottom line is their athleticism makes them better players. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. If you're a better athlete, you're going to be, you're going to have an advantage. That's the bottom line. That's why all of the top football recruits are the top football recruits, is they're more athletic. Now, with that being said, we've got to make sure we're building systems and doing ref training and not pissing off the refs by yelling at them, parents and coaches and me, because without the refs, we don't even have a game. We can scrimmage all day and night, but everyone likes to go and they like to have their games. So, okay, so a couple of the other issues that we'll get to, and I think we're about, that's about all the issues that I had here. I might get into something else for a second, but okay, so daddy ball versus football coaches who understand running with the ball and hitting. So like I just mentioned, this is kind of a pride and education thing. I've worked with a lot of coaches who will say this. When we do this, we score. And it pisses me off so much, because what they don't understand is that they're eliminating all of the other players' advantages to do everything but that, right? And so this was actually a pretty good idea. It was, a dodge from X and a bunch of cuts. And, you're getting off-ball movement, but the kids who are cutting are never learning to dodge, and the other players who are on attack who are not dodging from X are never learning anything. And so to create an environment where all of the players can just learn the sport at a, we'll just say 6th grade white level, I think it's more important to have all of the kids learning everything. So there's a pride thing where whether it's daddy ball or just someone who's coming from another sport, learns the sport, you kind of you have to understand. So I'm going to, here's a point that I've wanted to kind of like talk through for a while. The reason why inexperienced coaches who have never played the game or just don't know the game, why they yell more than everybody else, is because they don't understand all of the decision making and ideas around a concept. So in my new picking video and PDF, I outline everything, because when a kid is in a game, he needs to just react. And if he doesn't just react, he's going to slow down. And you don't want him to slow down, because it's a lot easier to teach a kid how to do something different while he's known playing fast than it is to have him do it slow and then it'd be like, cool, now do it at full speed. They don't know. They don't do that. You got to have them play at full speed, then you can teach them new stuff. Now, the thing that frustrates everyone is when they have an idea on how something should look, they explain it, they say it to the kids, and then the kids don't do exactly what they say. And when that happens, without the foundation of what the kid who is making the mistake might think, it's frustrating because you don't see what you're trying to get them to do, and it becomes frustrating, so they yell. When if they had the overall understanding that built through that, it basically, you can't see what the kid might have thought, so you yell because it's frustrating because they're not doing what you thought. Okay, we've got a question. I do want to continue on that too. So this question is, what's your opinion on coaches allowing their clearly physically superior team to win that way against an overmatched team as opposed to not necessarily allowing them to win that way? Thank you, Casey. And making them learn the right way to better prepare them for future. Okay, I always think about the right way. Love you too, Carter. I always like the right way. Okay, now here's a big one. This one's crazy. So we were playing in our 7-on-7 tournament, and we were dominating. You know, these kids are good, and they were playing against a group that wasn't as experienced at them as they were. And I hear a mom from the other side go, "Why don't they just pass it around?" And I think to myself, "Oh, you're eliminating your own kid's ability to play the game." Like, so in 7-on-7, if you score, you get a free clear for the other team. And I am of the persuasion, I don't know, it wasn't Mike Ditka, it was Jimmy. I forget the coach's name. He basically was a coach for Miami. Someone's going to write it somewhere. But he basically said, we had, we're dominating this game. So here's my thought, just to clarify it. In the 7-on-7 tournament, when the mom said, "Why don't they just throw the ball around?" because we were up really big, my answer is, my players are going to play the game. If they have an opportunity, they're going to take it, and I'll explain exactly why. The reason why is because by scoring, we give the other team an opportunity to get the ball to play the game. Throwing the ball around doesn't do anything. So, two stories. It's the same story from two things. First one was of the Tommyknockers team that is in the thumbnail against a team that was vastly not as good as they were, which is mainly all teams at their age group in Colorado. And then when I coached for Ridgeview Academy, which it is a youth corrections facility, so these kids had never played, and we were playing against Regis. And Regis here is, perennial powerhouse. They're one of the top 4 teams in the state every single year. So we've got a bunch of kids who've never played the sport versus a varsity team that's winning state championships. And Regis would be up 15-0 in the first quarter because they didn't know the game. Like, our guys didn't understand. And what Regis would do is they would pass the ball around. They'd have cutters. They'd feed the cutters. They'd run their offense. They'd hit it every single time, and they would just pull the ball out and go again. Now, as a coach who's getting destroyed, you can look at that at one of two ways. First, I don't like the fact that they don't score because I like the idea that in the natural flow of things, I want to give my face-off guy another time to win that face-off. I don't necessarily want to have the ball on our defensive end and just kind of being toyed with. So that's why I don't agree with the parent who's like, why don't they just throw it around? The Tommyknockers did that this weekend. They had a couple teams they played that they could just throw the ball around. I don't like that. That's not the sport. You're supposed to score a goal. You can score a goal without being disrespectful, even if you're up really big. I don't think, like, if it's a good play or you make them play lefty, there's a lot of things that you can do to make it so that's not what it is. Now, that's just my opinion. Some people might get pissy if, that's what you do. Okay. I think I clarified that pretty decently, but who knows? So, another one of the issues that was put into this thing, Casey, I'm glad that you guys love 2112. It's definitely a good offense. One of the keys I've found with 2112 is if you can build it and then let them freelance, that's the best way it works, because if you just teach them 3 or 4 different ways to move, the idea behind 2112 is not to make them do what the offense is. It's actually to teach them a bunch of different things so that they just read and react. But that's neither here nor there for this conversation, but I threw it in anyway. So next thing on this guy's list was essentially Warrior, Under Armour, and ESPNU. He said that they threw lacrosse into the limelight and that it had a negative effect because it basically, what was a lacrosse community based on modesty and of playing the sport and the skills, is that because it was thrown into that limelight of, all the football kids who always had to win, that was a bad thing. I disagree with that 100%. I think that the growth of the sport is tremendous, and everyone within their locations has to try to build the game as well as they can. Now, I am a full-on finesse, the skill is what matters type of person, because I was never the most athletic person, and also, you guys have seen my stick trick videos. I love the stick tricks. I love the finesse of doing it. It's like it's something that's never ending. It can go on forever. I can still learn new cool stick tricks, and even trying the ones that I used to be able to do was awesome, but I can't do all of the ones I used to be able to do. So I like the finesse, and I think that the reason why lacrosse is growing so much is because you're adding this physical element of like football to a skill set that is extremely difficult. It's what creates all the problems in lacrosse. It's why everyone who is trying, we're going to do I think my next live stream will be on this, but the hierarchy of lacrosse, like people come and they're like, hey, what should I do with my, second graders versus my, fifth graders versus my seventh graders? And I'll tell you this, I know of I bet 80% of the 7th grade teams in Colorado right now, 80%, so basically everybody but the red division, is not working on as advanced concepts as the Tommyknockers 2027 team, which I believe are 5th graders now. Because basically the Tommyknockers team, they're very good athletes. They work very hard. They all practice all the time. And those two groups, although they're so, they're 2 years apart, the white level or blue level 7th grade teams who can't throw and catch can't move on to any concepts. That's one of the cool things about coaching the Scorpions, is that because all of them can throw and catch, it's very easy to give them new concepts. I think that's one of the topics for one of the JM3 live streams or webinars that's coming up with that is basically the idea that having great stick skills makes offense easy. So I think that that's definitely something there. I already talked about the fact that physicality wins and athleticism wins. I think that's a big thing. So to wrap all this up, I kind of went off on a couple tangents there, which is what I like to do. I think that's definitely beneficial. The idea of reclassification makes sense to me if it's someone who is trying to get into a specific school, because going to a better school, even if it takes you a year longer to get there, going to Yale versus going to name your state school makes sense in someone's grand scheme. I get it. Now, for most people, that's not even an option. you're still an elite player and person if you're going to be able to go to Yale. So for most of us, that's kind of not the thing. Now, for everybody, I don't agree with holding your kid back in kindergarten or taking a post-grad year. I really don't believe in the idea of holding back your life. I mean, and all this is also based around the idea that college is the right decision for the kid, which I think is forced upon most kids, a lot of whom actually don't want to go to college, and college probably won't serve them. Another quick story is a friend of mine in high school. I met him after he got out of college at CSU, and his first thing he said was, "Man, I'm so upset that I spent that last 4 years." And so he was a business major, and he now owns a roofing company that is doing extremely well in Colorado. And his complaint was, he's like, I could be 4 years into building my business versus having gone to college. Now, college can give you a lot of great things, but it's not for everybody. And so if it is for you, that's awesome. Make sure you know what you're going to study. Don't go get in debt because of that. But so the idea of reclassing to go to a better school does make sense to me. I think it is I don't know if it's ruining it. I think it's making the club lacrosse scene more difficult to evaluate, because you don't know if you're going to go into a tournament and be playing kids that are a year older than all of your kids. So we were supposed to go to the Western Shootout this last summer. Western Shootout is an adrenaline tournament in the Springs, and we decided not to go to that tournament and to pick up 2 other tournaments, because the Western Shootout was $5,000. These other 2 tournaments were like $3,000, and I ended up paying adrenaline $2,000 for deposits, almost $5,000 in total for nothing, because we didn't go because our team would have gotten destroyed. Simply because, I mean, I'm not a big recruiter. I want to play the game. I want to enjoy the game. I don't want to be so caught up in recruiting and all that. I think the kids have to enjoy the sport more than anything. But so, yeah. So I definitely think that if the club scene can evaluate it and can make it so it's age-based, good, but it can't be a mandate from U.S. Lacrosse. It has to be something that the tournament wants to do and can do. I think that a way to do that, like I kind of already touched on, is to make an all-star game for anyone who has already graduated but who would like to be evaluated by more players. Casey has one last question, and we will end this live stream on that note. So I hope I kind of got through those ideas. Casey asks, how do you prep for a 7v7 tournament with limited time before your tournament? The answer to that is you put in your offense without 2 players. That's at least how I do it. So I'll be coming out with a couple of videos. I hope I got the film that I thought I had, because some people who were supposed to be filming didn't film very well. So when I was watching the game and I saw a play that I wanted to get, I looked up at the camera and the camera was pointed where I thought it was supposed to be pointed, and then it might not be there. So hopefully I got the film that I wanted. But so basically for our last tournament, what we're doing for this whole winter is we're working on a concept of finding picks and then off-ball movement. So for the 7v7 tournament and the practice beforehand, we practiced picks. We talk about how picks should work. We had them free play through it. The first day of each tournament was always about free play. The second day of the tournament, we put in a little more organization. We did really well. We actually, this last weekend, we lost to 2 teams by 2 or 3 goals the first day when they had to freelance it. And the reason why we freelance it is because if we freelance, it makes off-ball people work. It doesn't allow them to sit off-ball. They have to be engaged. And so that once we give them some organization where they know where they're supposed to sit, they're used to cutting off ball. They're used to doing all of those things. But so we lost when they were freelancing the first day. And then in the second day, we put a little more structure where we were up picking using Up Pick Nations, which is one of the 7v7 videos that I have, and they crushed it. I want to say our first 3 goals were on like perfect Up Pick Nations plays on Sunday, and the reason why they were able to play so well, at least in my opinion, on the second day was because they were all actively engaged in playing freely the first day. So even though we kind of tried to put them in a set the second day, they maintained their ability to play fast on the other day. Let's see. One more question. I believe you can simultaneously teach higher level concepts and build to improve skills. When you whiteboard plays concepts, there is no skill disparity to interfere with learning. You can use tennis balls or another device to mimic sticks and balls. Welcome, Casey. This is from Pipe Crusher. What is that in relation to, Pipe Crusher? When you whiteboard plays concepts. So, I'm with you on the teaching process. The hard part about that is that so many times kids will say, yes, I understand, and then they don't have the actions of doing it. I'm with you in terms of sometimes being able to teach the idea, but teaching, it's like, what's the quote? The quote is, you can know how to do a push-up, but it's not doing a push-up. And so I think there's a big difference between actually doing it and not. But so, yeah, cool. So what up, Packy? I'm actually about to just head out and run this. You're welcome, Charlie. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be pulling some stuff from this. This was a good live stream. I think feeding Turner is the best way to go before a nap time live stream. So that's very nice. Good to see you too, man. Thank you guys all for tuning in, and we'll be back next week. I'm not sure if it'll be morning or afternoon, but I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch. Have a good one. Bye.